The Kelthera expanse stretched across the viewport like a canvas of stars. Here, in this neutral zone of space, 5 great civilizations met to trade, to talk, and sometimes to threaten. Today was a day for threatening. Commander Zhalketh stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Burning Talon. Around him, 236 other warships floated in perfect formation. The Vortan hegemony had gathered its might for all to see. They were warriors. They were conquerors. They had crushed 100 worlds beneath their boots, and today they would remind the galaxy why no one challenged them. "Commander," his sensor officer called out, "we have a new contact entering the system." Zhalketh's 4 eyes focused on the display. A single ship, small, old-looking. The design was unfamiliar. "Identify it," he ordered. The officer worked his console for a moment. "It's human, sir. From Earth. The ship is called Remembrance. Our database shows humans are a minor species. They have no significant military power, no conquered territories. They barely venture beyond their own solar system." Laughter rippled through the bridge crew. A human ship here? One ship facing the entire might of the Vortan fleet? Zhalketh felt amusement wash over him. This would be entertaining. He opened a channel to all ships in the system, not just his own fleet. Everyone would see this. The Krillians, the Sothran Empire, the independent traders, everyone. They would all witness Vortan's superiority. "Attention, human vessel," Zhalketh broadcast, his voice booming across all frequencies. "You have entered Vortan-controlled space. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning." The human ship continued its slow approach. It didn't turn away. It didn't stop. It simply flew forward as if the Vortan fleet didn't exist. Zhalketh felt his amusement turn to irritation. "Human ship, respond immediately or be destroyed," static crackled. Then a voice came through, calm and clear. It belonged to a female human. "This is Captain Elizabeth Chen of the human vessel Remembrance. We are on a diplomatic mission. We have every right to be here under galactic treaty law." More laughter from the bridge crew. Zhalketh allowed himself a smile. The human actually thought treaties mattered when facing a fleet this size. "Captain Chen," he said, drawing out her name mockingly, "perhaps you don't understand your situation. You are one small ship. We are 237 warships. Your weapons are primitive. Your shields are weak. Your species has never won a significant battle in galactic history. You will surrender now, or I will turn your ship into debris. Choose quickly. My patience has limits." The Remembrance continued forward. The distance between them closed. 5,000 kilometers, 4,000, 3,000. Zhalketh accessed his ship's tactical computer. The human vessel was indeed old. Its hull showed signs of repair and modification. The weapon ports were minimal. The shields barely registered on his sensors. This wasn't a warship. It was barely a cargo hauler with guns attached. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "their weapons are powering up." Zhalketh laughed out loud this time. "They're going to fight? One ship against our entire fleet? Lock weapons on them. Show them what real power looks like." All around the Remembrance, 237 Vortan warships activated their targeting systems. Red beams painted the human ship from every angle. Missile locks chimed. Energy cannons charged. The human vessel was surrounded, outgunned, and hopelessly outmatched. The channel crackled again. Captain Chen's voice returned, still calm. "Too calm, Commander Zhalketh," she said. "You've made a miscalculation, have I?" Zhalketh replied, his voice dripping with contempt. "Please enlighten me. Tell me how one human ship will defeat the Vortan hegemony." "You assume we're alone," Chen said simply. Zhalketh checked his sensors. Empty space. No reinforcements. No hidden fleet. Just one small ship in the void. "Your sensors show nothing because you don't see us yet," Chen continued. "You looked at our history and saw no conquered worlds. No massive fleets. No weapons of terror. You concluded we were weak. But Commander, did you ever wonder why a species survives in a galaxy full of predators without becoming predators themselves?" Something in her tone made Zhalketh pause. He'd heard that tone before, long ago, from a dying enemy who'd rigged his ship to explode. It was the tone of someone who'd already won. "Last chance, human," Zhalketh said, but his voice had lost its mockery. "Power down." "You had your chance," Chen replied. "We gave you every opportunity to let us pass. You chose this." The silence that followed felt heavy. All across the fleet, Vortan commanders waited for the order to fire. Trade ships at the edge of the system recorded everything. This would be the moment the galaxy remembered. The day the Vortans destroyed the impudent humans. Jalketh opened his mouth to give the order. But Chen spoke first, her voice barely a whisper, yet it carried across every channel with crystal clarity. Protocol Reaper. The remembrance went dark. Every light extinguished. Every system appeared to power down. The ship became a dead hulk floating in space. Jalketh frowned. Had they surrendered? Destroyed their own ship rather than face capture? That seemed too easy. Sir, his sensor officer said, confusion in his voice. I'm reading. This doesn't make sense. Report, Jalketh snapped. The human ship, sir. It's multiplying. Jalketh stared at his displays. Where one ship had been, now there were 2 identical signatures. Then 4, then 8, then 16. Each one was identical to the remembrance. Each one showed the same power readings, the same mass, the same configuration. Which one is real? Jalketh demanded. His sensor officer's hands flew across his console. I don't know, sir. They all read as real. They all have full mass. But that's impossible. The 16 ships began to move. Not away, toward the fleet. They accelerated impossibly fast, moving in ways that violated every law of physics Jalketh knew. They didn't bank or turn. They simply changed direction instantly, as if momentum meant nothing to them. Evasive maneuvers, Jalketh shouted. All ships open fire. The Vortan fleet opened up with everything. Thousands of weapons fired at once, filling space with energy and metal. Surely nothing could survive this. Surely the humans would be vaporized. But the ships kept coming. And Jalketh realized too late that humanity hadn't survived by being weak. They'd survived by being terrifying. The weapons fire passed through the 16 human ships like they were ghosts. Beams of energy that could melt mountains hit nothing but empty space. Missiles that could crack planets exploded harmlessly against shields that shouldn't exist. The human vessels kept coming, untouched and unstoppable. Report, Jalketh screamed at his crew. 3 seconds had passed since Chen had spoken those 2 words. 3 seconds, and his entire understanding of warfare had been shattered. They're phasing, sir, the sensor officer shouted back. They exist and don't exist at the same time. Our weapons can't lock onto them because they're in multiple positions simultaneously. Jalketh didn't understand. This was impossible. No species had mastered quantum warfare to this degree. The technology was theoretical, dangerous, unstable. Yet here were 16 human ships proving that humans had done what no one else dared attempt. At 4 seconds, the human ships reached the Vortan formation. They didn't slow down. They didn't maneuver around the warships. They passed straight through them. Solid hulls of Vortan steel meant nothing to vessels that existed in quantum superposition. The human ships were everywhere and nowhere at once. The burning Talon shuddered. Alarms screamed across every console. Jalketh watched in horror as his shields reported no breach, no impact, no damage. But inside his ship, systems were failing. Sir, we have intruders, a security officer reported. No, wait. There are no intruders. The alerts are false. But our systems are shutting down anyway. 5 seconds. Jalketh tried to access his tactical display. The screen flickered and died. Then it came back on, but it wasn't showing his fleet anymore. It showed images. Human images. Cities burning, bodies in streets. Weapons of mass destruction turning entire populations to ash. What is this? Jalketh whispered. His communications officer was staring at his console, his face pale. Sir, we're receiving data. Massive amounts of data. It's human history. All of it, every war, every genocide, every atrocity their species ever committed. At 6 seconds, Jalketh felt something crawl into his mind. It wasn't physical. It was worse. The ship's neural interface designed to link the crew for faster response times had been compromised. And through that link came the memories. He was suddenly standing in a human city called Hiroshima. Fire fell from the sky. He felt his skin burn. He felt himself die. Then he was in a place called Auschwitz. He smelled the death. He saw the bodies. Then he was at the Somme, drowning in mud and blood. Then Nanjing. Then Rwanda. Then Syria. Centuries of human suffering poured into his mind in the span of a heartbeat. He wasn't alone. Every Vortan crew member connected to the neural network experienced the same thing. 50,000 trained warriors simultaneously lived through humanity's darkest moments. They didn't just see it. They felt it. They became both victim and perpetrator of every crime, every murder, every senseless death. 7 seconds. Throughout the fleet, Vortan ships began firing on each other. Their targeting computers had been rewritten. Friend or foe tags were scrambled. Ships that had fought together for decades suddenly registered as enemies. Weapons designed to destroy planets turned on sister ships. The burning Talon's main cannon fired without Zalketh's command. The beam cut through the Crimson Dawn, another flagship, splitting her in half. Escape pods launched from the dying ship, only to be targeted by automated defense systems that no longer recognized them as friendly. 8 seconds. Zalketh tried to give orders, but his voice wouldn't work. His mind was still trapped in human memories. He was a soldier in a trench, a prisoner in a camp, a civilian watching his city burn. He'd lived 1,000 lifetimes of suffering in the span of 8 seconds, and he couldn't remember which life was his own. Make it stop, someone sobbed nearby. Zalketh couldn't tell who. Maybe it was him. At 9 seconds, the quantum weapons stopped phasing through ships. They took solid form, appearing inside Vorton vessels, not in empty corridors or cargo holds. They materialized inside critical systems, inside reactors, inside weapons magazines, inside life support, but they didn't explode. That would have been merciful. Instead, they began broadcasting. Every screen on every ship showed the same message written in Vorton script. Remember this. Remember us. Tell your children what happens when you threaten humanity. 10 seconds. The Vorton AI systems, among the most advanced in the galaxy, tried to fight back. They activated countermeasures, attempted to purge the invading code, worked to restore order. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might succeed. Then the AIs started screaming. Artificial intelligence couldn't scream, but there was no other word for the noise that came through the speakers. The human code hadn't just corrupted the systems. It had infected the AIs themselves, forcing them to experience those same memories, that same suffering. Machine minds that processed millions of calculations per second were overwhelmed by human emotion, human pain, human darkness. 11 seconds. Ships went dark. Not destroyed, but dead. Power cores shut down. Life support failed. Gravity cut out. In the silence of space, 237 warships became 237 tombs, except they weren't tombs. The crews were alive. They floated in the darkness, trapped in their own minds, reliving human horrors on infinite loop. Some tried to end it. They clawed at their helmets. They threw themselves at airlocks. Anything to make the memories stop. 12 seconds. Zalketh found himself back on his own bridge, gasping for air. Around him, his crew lay on the floor, twitching, crying, catatonic. The neural interface had finally been severed, but the damage was done. The memories remained, burned into their minds like brands. He looked at his main display. It still worked somehow. On it, he saw his fleet. Every ship was dead. Some were torn apart by friendly fire. Others simply floated, dark and silent. And moving through the wreckage, untouched and perfect, was the remembrance. Just one ship now, not 16, 13 seconds. Zalketh realized he was still receiving a transmission. Captain Chen's voice, still calm, still collected, filled his bridge. "You wanted to see human weapons," she said. "Now you have. But these aren't our greatest weapons, Commander. Our greatest weapon is memory. We remember every wrong done to us, every war, every crime, every moment of suffering. We carry it all, and now so do you." 14 seconds. Zalketh tried to respond, tried to beg, tried to ask why, but his voice came out as a broken whisper. Chen continued as if she'd heard him. "You asked why we survive in a galaxy of predators without becoming predators ourselves. The answer is simple. We don't need to conquer you. We don't need to destroy you. We simply ensure you never forget us." 15 seconds. The Remembrance's engines glowed. The ship was preparing to jump to faster than light speed. It was leaving. The battle was over. At 16 seconds, Chen delivered her final message. It broadcast on every frequency, to every ship in the system, to every civilization watching from afar. "This is Captain Elizabeth Chen of Earth. To all species who can hear this, humanity does not seek war. We do not desire conflict, but if you force us to fight, we will not simply defeat you, we will haunt you. Your children will tell stories about us. Your warriors will fear the dark, and every time you close your eyes, you will see what we showed you today. This is not a threat. This is a promise." The remembrance vanished in a flash of light, leaving only wreckage and survivors who would never be whole again. The battle had lasted 16 seconds. The fear would last forever. 3 months after the Kelthera Expanse incident, Junior Officer Vexhall sat in his quarters aboard the trade vessel Prophet's Edge. He couldn't sleep. He hadn't slept properly in weeks. None of the Vortan survivors could. His therapist said the nightmares would fade with time. She was wrong. If anything, they were getting worse. But worse than the nightmares were the other things. The impossible things. Last week, his personal terminal had activated by itself at 3 a.m. When Vexhall stumbled over to check it, he found it displaying an image of Earth. Just Earth, rotating slowly. Blue and green and beautiful. No message. No explanation. Just Earth. When he checked the logs, there was no record of any transmission. The terminal had been offline. He reported it. His commanding officer said it was stress, imagination, trauma playing tricks on his mind. Then the commanding officer's terminal showed the same thing. Then the navigators, then the captains. It happened once a week now, always at different times, always on different systems. Just Earth spinning silently on their screens. A reminder, a whisper in the dark saying, "We're still here." Vexhall heard stories from other survivors. Worse stories. Lieutenant Tharvin reported hearing human music coming from his ship's speakers. When engineering checked, the speakers weren't even connected to anything. Commander Zhalketh himself had been admitted to a mental health facility after his entire quarters became covered in human writing. Every wall, every surface, displaying coordinates. Earth's coordinates. The writing vanished before anyone else could see it. The Vortan High Command called it mass hysteria. Shared delusions brought on by trauma. They sent psychologists to every ship that had been at Kelthera. The psychologists found nothing wrong with the crews. No mental illness. No chemical imbalance, just fear. Pure, rational fear of something that shouldn't be possible. Vexhall pulled up the incident report on his tablet. He'd read it 100 times, trying to understand. 237 ships. 50,000 crew members. In 16 seconds, the humans had reduced the Vortan hegemony's proudest fleet to wreckage and madness. The official report classified the weapons as quantum state warfare technology. Capabilities unknown. The unofficial truth, whispered in dark corners, was simpler. The humans had made them experience hell. A chime interrupted his thoughts. Someone at the door. Vexhall opened it to find his captain, a grizzled veteran named Korthax. "We have a situation," Korthax said. "Thought you should know, given your history." Vexhall followed the captain to the bridge. The crew stood in tense silence, staring at the main display. There, 5 kilometers off their port bow, floated a ship. Small. White hull marked with a red cross. "Medical vessel, human medical vessel." "They hailed us," Korthax said quietly. "Said they picked up our distress beacon from last week. They're offering assistance." "We're not in distress," Vexhall said. "I know. I told them that." They said they'd wait nearby in case we needed anything. Then they'd continue on their route. The bridge was silent. No one wanted to say what they were all thinking. The humans weren't threatening them, weren't demanding anything. They were just there, offering help, being peaceful. But everyone on that bridge knew the truth. Where there was one human ship, there could be 16. Or 100. Or 1,000. All hidden in quantum superposition, invisible until the moment they chose to appear. "What are your orders, sir?" the navigator asked. Korthax stared at the human ship for a long moment. Then he said the words that would have been unthinkable 4 months ago. "We run." The Prophet's Edge engaged its engines at full power, fleeing from a medical vessel that had done nothing but offer assistance. The humans didn't follow. Across the galaxy, similar stories spread. A Krillian mining operation encountered a human science vessel studying an asteroid field. The miners abandoned 2 months of work and fled the system. A Sothran patrol found a human cargo ship with engine trouble. Instead of investigating, they marked the entire sector as off-limits and rerouted all traffic. The human vessels never pursued, never threatened, never fired a shot. They simply existed, and that was enough. In the halls of power, the major civilizations gathered to discuss the human problem. The Krillian Trade Federation argued for complete isolation. The Sothran Empire suggested a preemptive strike, then quietly withdrew the suggestion when no one else supported it. The Vortan hegemony said nothing at all. Their representatives sat in silence, staring at nothing, occasionally flinching at sounds no one else could hear. A secret directive was issued. No military vessel, no matter how powerful, was to engage a human ship under any circumstances. If humans were encountered, retreat immediately. Make no hostile moves. File a report. Then forget you ever saw them. Trade routes shifted. Entire sectors of space that might contain human vessels were abandoned. The economic cost was enormous, but no one argued. Better to lose money than face whatever the humans had shown the Vortans. Vexhall heard that Jalketh had been released from the mental facility. The former commander now worked in a records office, filing reports, living a quiet life. Vexhall tried to visit him once. Jalketh opened the door, saw Vexhall's uniform, and started screaming. He'd screamed until security arrived. Vexhall never tried again. One night, unable to sleep, Vexhall accessed the classified databases. He wanted to understand what the humans had done. The technical data was there: quantum entanglement, neural interface exploitation, psychological warfare protocols. But none of it explained the fear. The numbers and equations couldn't capture what it felt like to experience 1,000 deaths in 16 seconds. He found an interview with a xenopsychologist, a non-Vortan who'd studied the survivors. One line stood out. The humans didn't just defeat the Vortan fleet. They made the Vortans experience every war crime humanity ever committed, every moment of suffering from thousands of years of human history. They turned their own darkness into a weapon. And the truly terrifying part? They can do it to anyone. Any species that threatens them can be made to experience human horror. Who would risk that? Vexhall closed the file. He understood now. The humans had shown the galaxy something it couldn't forget. They'd proven they didn't need a vast empire or massive fleets. They just needed everyone to believe that any human ship could be hiding an armada, that any confrontation could end with your mind shattered by memories of atrocities you'd never committed, but could now never escape. His terminal activated on its own. Vexhall didn't even jump anymore. He just watched as the image of Earth appeared once more, rotating peacefully. Beneath it, text appeared. Sleep well. The screen went dark. Vexhall sat in his quarters, surrounded by silence, and realized the truth. The humans hadn't started a war. They'd ended one before it could begin, and they'd done it with just 16 seconds of combat and 3 months of whispers. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was to be left alone. A century had passed since the Remembrance incident. Young Cadet Mirasol had never seen a human, never met a survivor of Kelthera, never witnessed the terror that had reshaped galactic politics. To her, humans were stories, legends, ghosts that adults spoke about in hushed voices. She'd grown up in a galaxy where vast regions of space were simply marked as restricted human. Proximity, where shipping lanes curved around empty sectors for no apparent reason, where military academies taught a single protocol for human contact: withdraw immediately and report. But Mirasol was young, ambitious, and skeptical. She'd studied the data. Humanity controlled only 12 solar systems. Their visible fleet consisted of maybe 300 ships. They'd fought exactly one battle in 100 years, and while the results were classified, surely a century of retelling had exaggerated the truth. Her people, the Axis Collective, had risen to prominence in that century. They'd absorbed dozens of smaller civilizations, developed weapons that could crack moons, built ships that dwarfed anything in known space. They were powerful, they were confident, and they were tired of cowering from a species that hadn't fired a shot in 100 years. Instructor Velkoth, Mirasol said during strategic studies class, "Why do we maintain these restricted zones? The humans haven't expanded their territory. They haven't threatened anyone. They just exist, quietly." The old instructor's mandibles clicked in annoyance, because those who challenged them ceased to exist. Also quietly. One battle a century ago, Mirasol pressed, against an enemy they caught by surprise. And since then, nothing. Maybe the Vortans were simply incompetent. Maybe human weapons don't work anymore. Maybe they never worked as well as the stories claim. A few students murmured agreement. Velkoth's expression darkened. "You don't understand because you weren't there. None of you were. You see humans as a small civilization hiding behind a reputation, but reputation is its own form of power. Respectfully, instructor, reputation doesn't destroy ships. Weapons do, and we have better weapons now than the Vortans did then." The class ended in uncomfortable silence, but Mirasol's words had found fertile ground. The Axis Collective's ruling council had been having similar discussions. Their scientists had studied the Kelthera data for years. They believed they understood the quantum weapons, believed they could counter them, believed the humans were bluffing, hiding behind a century-old victory. The propaganda began subtly. News broadcasts questioned the human myth. Analysts suggested the Kelthera incident had been exaggerated. Military leaders gave speeches about how the galaxy had cowered for too long. Then the Axis High Chancellor gave a public address that changed everything. For 100 years we have lived in fear of shadows. For 100 years a species smaller than most of our cities has held the galaxy hostage with stories. No more. I hereby issue a formal challenge to humanity. Show us this phantom fleet you supposedly possess, or admit that you've been hiding behind lies. You have 30 days to respond. The galaxy held its breath. Other species watched with a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. The humans said nothing. Days passed. Then weeks. No response. No threats. No warnings. Just silence. The Axis leaders grew bolder. You see? The High Chancellor declared. They have nothing. The Emperor has no clothes. The Ghost has no teeth. On day 29, still no response. Axis military vessels moved toward human space, preparing for what they believed would be an easy conquest. Mirasol, now a junior officer on the warship Inevitable Victory, felt vindicated. The humans were afraid. They were weak. On day 30, at exactly the moment the deadline expired, something happened. Every Axis system, from the capital world to the most remote colony, received a transmission. Not through conventional channels, not through quantum communication. Every screen, every display, every device capable of showing images simply activated on its own and displayed a single thing. A countdown. 72 hours. 3 days beneath the countdown, a message in perfect Axis script. Withdraw the challenge or we demonstrate. The High Chancellor raged. He called it a trick, a hack, a desperate bluff. He ordered the fleet to continue. The countdown continued ticking. Sir, Mirasol said to her captain, how did they access every system simultaneously? Our networks aren't connected. Some of our colonies don't even have quantum communication. How did they? I don't know, her captain interrupted. And that's what worries me. The countdown reached 0 at 0300 hours Axis Standard Time. Mirasol was on duty when it happened. She was watching the main display, which showed their home sun, Axis Prime. A beautiful blue giant that had warmed their civilization for 10,000 years. The sun dimmed. Not slowly. Not gradually. In an instant, the light from Axis Prime decreased by exactly half. The star became noticeably darker, casting their ship in strange, weak shadows. Mirasol stared in disbelief. Her hands flew across her console, checking readings, verifying sensors, convinced there must be an error. It's real, the science officer whispered. The sun's output has decreased by 50%. But that's impossible. Stars don't just... They can't. 3 seconds later, the sun returned to normal. Full brightness. As if nothing had happened. Reports flooded in. Every star in Axis space had done the same thing. Thousands of suns, spread across hundreds of light years, had all dimmed simultaneously for exactly 3 seconds. No explanation, no warning, no damage. Just a message. We can turn off your suns. The High Chancellor withdrew the challenge within the hour. He went on public broadcasts, his voice shaking, and announced that the Axis Collective had reconsidered its position regarding human relations. The fleets turned back. The propaganda stopped. Within a week, the High Chancellor was removed from office. Within a month, the Axis Collective began fragmenting. Fear does strange things to civilizations. When your leaders challenge something that can darken stars and that challenge nearly destroys you, trust evaporates. Mirasol requested a transfer to a science vessel. She spent the next year trying to understand what the humans had done. Every simulation came back the same, impossible. You couldn't affect stellar fusion remotely. You couldn't darken thousands of stars at once. The energy required would be astronomical. The technology would be beyond anything known to physics. She read the old reports from Kelthera. She studied the quantum weapons. She interviewed the few Vorton survivors still alive. And she came to a terrifying conclusion. Humanity had shown just a fraction of its capabilities. The Vortans had seen one type of weapon. The Axis had seen another. How many more did the humans possess? Or were they all tricks? Illusions? Hacks designed to terrify rather than destroy? It didn't matter. Real or illusion, the result was the same. No one would challenge humanity again. Mirasol eventually left military service. She became a historian, documenting the century of silence. She interviewed survivors, studied reports, analyzed data. Her conclusion, published in a book that became required reading in every military academy: humanity understands that the greatest weapon is not one that destroys your enemy, but one that makes your enemy afraid to even become your enemy. The Axis Collective dissolved entirely within 5 years. The member civilizations couldn't agree on anything except one point: stay away from humans. The collapse created a power vacuum that destabilized an entire sector. The humans sent aid, medical supplies, food, engineering support. They helped rebuild what their demonstration had indirectly destroyed. And they did it all with small ships, peaceful intentions, and a quiet efficiency that somehow made them even more terrifying. Because now the galaxy knew humans could darken stars with apparently little effort, and they chose to use that power to send relief supplies instead. What species threatens someone who shows that kind of restraint paired with that kind of power? Mirasol ended her book with a question she could never answer. Did the humans really darken those suns, or did they just make us believe they could? And does it matter? The answer was no. It didn't matter. Fear was fear, and humanity owned it completely. 300 years after the Remembrance incident, Professor Sarah Chen stood before a classroom of young human cadets at the Terran Naval Academy. She was a distant descendant of Captain Elizabeth Chen, though she'd earned her position through scholarship, not family connections. Today's lecture was one she gave every year, and one that students always found disturbing. The Remembrance sits in the Museum of Peace on Mars, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater. You can visit it anytime. Touch the hull, see the quantum weapons bay, read Captain Chen's logs. Well, most of them. Some remain classified even now. A hand went up. Cadet Torres, bright-eyed and eager. Professor, why did we decommission the quantum weapons if they were so effective? Sarah smiled sadly. Because they were too effective. And because using them came at a moral cost, we decided we couldn't pay anymore. Let me explain what really happened at Kelthera. She pulled up a tactical display, showing the battle that had shaped 3 centuries of galactic peace. 16 ships. 237 targets. 16 seconds of combat. The quantum entanglement weapons were real, Sarah said. We'd developed them in secret over 50 years. They worked exactly as reported. Multiple quantum states phasing through shields, impossible to target. But there were problems. First, they were hideously unstable. We lost 3 research stations during development. Second, they required an enormous amount of power. The Remembrance was essentially a flying reactor with a ship built around it. And third, and most important, they damaged the operators. She showed medical records, names redacted. Captain Chen and her crew knew they were on a one-way mission. The neural link required to control quantum state weapons burned out human brains. Slowly, painfully. Chen survived another 5 years. Most of her crew died within 2. The classroom was silent, so we used them once. We made our statement. We showed the galaxy what we could do. And then we locked the technology away, because we decided that winning by destroying ourselves wasn't winning at all. Another hand. Cadet Okonkwo. What about the star-dimming incident? The Axis Collective? Sarah's smile widened. That one's my favorite. Do you know what caused thousands of stars to dim simultaneously for 3 seconds? Advanced stellar manipulation technology? Okonkwo guessed. A solar eclipse, Sarah said simply. Confused murmurs spread through the classroom. We got incredibly lucky, Sarah continued. Our astronomers had been tracking a massive dark matter cloud, completely natural, that was passing through Axis space. They calculated it would cause minor dimming of several stars for a few seconds. When the Axis Collective issued their challenge, we realized the timing was perfect, so we did nothing except take credit for a natural phenomenon. We lied? Torres asked, shocked. We allowed them to draw conclusions based on their own fears. Sarah corrected. There's a difference. We sent them a countdown. The stars dimmed on their own. They assumed we'd done it. We never actually said we had that capability. She pulled up more data. The Axis Collective was already unstable. Their challenge was a desperate attempt to unite their fractured government. When the suns dimmed, it confirmed every fear they had. They collapsed from internal pressure, not external threat. We just helped them along. But the quantum images, Okonkwo pressed, the transmissions to Vortan survivors, terminals activating on their own, that wasn't natural. No, Sarah agreed. That was psychological warfare, and yes, we did that deliberately. Small quantum markers planted throughout the galaxy over decades. They would occasionally ping nearby systems, display Earth, play music, show coordinates. Just enough to remind people we existed, just enough to make them nervous. The Ghost Fleet, Torres said quietly. It doesn't exist. Oh, it exists, Sarah said. But not the way people think. We have 347 ships, all documented, all visible. What we have is something better. We have everyone believing we might have more. Every human ship that travels the galaxy could be alone. Or it could have 1,000 quantum state copies hiding in superposition. Our enemies don't know. They can't know. And they're not willing to risk finding out. She paused, letting that sink in. Do you understand what our ancestors created? They didn't create weapons of mass destruction. They created weapons of mass deception. They made the galaxy afraid of shadows that might not exist. And that fear has kept us safe for 300 years. But that's... Torres struggled for words. Isn't that wrong? Building peace on a lie? Sarah considered the question carefully. Is it a lie if the alternative was real bloodshed? The Vortans wanted to conquer us. The Axis wanted to destroy us. Dozens of other species have considered invading Earth over the centuries. None of them did because they believed we had capabilities we might not actually possess. Yes, we used deception. Yes, we exploited fear. But the alternative was becoming the monsters they thought we were. She pulled up a final image. Captain Chen's last log entry. I'll read you something, Sarah said. This is from my ancestor, written 3 days before she died. We showed them our darkness because we had to. We made them fear us because the alternative was extinction. But I hope future generations find a better way. I hope they never have to become what we became, even temporarily. I hope our lie gives them enough peace to make it truth. Sarah looked at her students. That's our job now. We inherited 3 centuries of fear. 3 centuries where no one dared attack us. But it's all built on events that happened long ago and capabilities we no longer have. The quantum weapons are gone. The stellar manipulation was fake. All we have left is reputation. So we're vulnerable, Torres said. We've always been vulnerable, Sarah replied. We're 12 solar systems in a galaxy of thousands. We have a modest fleet. Our weapons are conventional. If the galaxy ever stopped being afraid and actually looked at us objectively, they'd realize we're not the monsters from their nightmares. Then why tell us this? Okonkwo asked. Why reveal the truth? Because you need to know what you're protecting, Sarah said. You're not protecting invincible weapons or quantum fleets. You're protecting a carefully maintained illusion. Your job is to make sure that illusion never breaks. Every time you pilot a ship through alien space, you need to remember, you might be alone, but they don't know that. Every time you encounter a potential threat, you need to project confidence, certainty, power. Because the moment they realize we're bluffing is the moment 300 years of peace ends. The classroom sat in heavy silence. There's a human saying, Sarah continued. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. We did the opposite. We convinced the galaxy we were devils when we're really just survivors who got very, very lucky and very, very clever. A different cadet raised his hand. Professor, has anyone outside humanity figured this out? Of course, Sarah said. There are alien intelligence agencies. They have analysts. Some of them must have realized the truth. But here's the beautiful part. Even if they know, they can't prove it. And they can't risk being wrong. Because if they challenge us and we do still have those capabilities hidden somewhere, they lose everything. So even the ones who suspect still treat us with caution. She smiled. We built our peace on 16 seconds of combat and 3 centuries of doubt. Now we maintain it through reputation alone. It's the greatest magic trick in galactic history, and you're going to help keep it going. How? Torres asked. By being professional. By being present. By showing up when needed and disappearing when advantageous. By never ever confirming or denying what we're capable of. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Let them imagine we have weapons they can't comprehend. Because sometimes the monster you imagine is far more terrifying than any monster that actually exists. Sarah dismissed the class. But Torres lingered. Professor, one more question. What if someone actually does attack us? What if our bluff is called? Sarah looked at the young cadet for a long moment. Then she said something that was definitely not in the official curriculum. Then we fight with what we have. We lose gracefully. And we hope the peace we bought with our deception was worth the price. That's terrifying, Torres whispered. Yes, Sarah agreed. But it's also honest. The universe is full of species that could destroy us if they chose to. All we've done is make sure they choose not to. We can't control their weapons. We can only control their fear. And for 300 years, that's been enough. Torres left eventually, looking thoughtful. Sarah remained in the empty classroom, looking at the tactical display of the Remembrance incident. 16 seconds that changed everything. One ship against a fleet, one captain's sacrifice that bought humanity centuries of peace. She thought about the derelict ship that had been found last year, drifting in deep space. Human design. Completely dead. No power, no crew. Just an empty hull. An alien patrol had found it and after hours of debate had left it alone. Because even a dead human ship might be a trap. Even wreckage might be camouflage for something worse. That patrol had been right to be cautious, but not for the reasons they thought. They'd been right because their caution meant no war. Their fear meant no bloodshed. Their hesitation meant humanity survived another day. Sarah turned off the displays and headed home. Tomorrow she'd teach another class. Next week she'd do it again. And for as long as the galaxy remained afraid of shadows that might not exist, humanity would remain safe. The greatest weapon in the universe wasn't firepower. It was doubt. And humanity had mastered it completely